Jay, it has been, and I was trying to figure this out. I do believe it's been 16, 17, 18, 19, 21, 2, 3, 4, 8 years, 8, 9 years since I last saw you. And you and I seem to have the same thing
Yeah.
going. We got the gray happening, but there's nothing we can do about it.
There's nothing you can do. You either have to go like shave it completely, which then you're like, I'm not a clean shaven guy.
Yeah.
Or else you just embrace it. So,
Yeah, exactly.
yeah.
Exactly. Man, how
No.
you doing? How's the rest of the guys doing? And congratulations on this.
Yeah.
What we're going to talk about the 20th anniversary, man.
Yeah, oh, thank you, by the way. Everyone's great. Me and Eon are good. We just were hanging out in Toronto yesterday. Life's good, We're like 'cause everything things are a bit slower now in terms of like I have a son, I like
Ah.
have a wife, like I have a dog. I had a dog before, but like life's slow in a good way. So yeah.
Yeah, no, I'm happy for you, man. I like. Did you ever think Bedouin Soundclash would turn out to be so? And I could say this as a fan,
Yeah.
legendary, groundbreaking,
Yeah.
um, being such an influence on Canadian music, not just Canadian music, but music in general, and the fact that you guys never followed trends, you
Yeah.
just did what you enjoyed.
Well, I'll start there. That's true. We had no idea. I was talking to somebody. I was talking to I'm sure you won't mind me saying this. I was talking to one time to Justin Peroff from Broken Social Scene, and he was mentioning our band because he's like, and then you guys came out. I mean, at the time, it was 2004, 2005, and I mean, it was either like Nickelback but it was like the Strokes and Broken Social Scene and like that in a real sort of in band world that was what was happening. And in terms of not following the trends, we didn't even realize me and Neon just liked the music we liked. I grew up listening to like reggae and drum and bass and punk music and folk music. And when I met Eon, he had this other knowledge of all this stuff I'd never heard, and I had all this stuff he'd never heard, and we just started making music in this bubble. And yeah, for better or worse, we got that reaction all the time. Like, where did you guys come from? But we felt like, and sometimes we wish we had a scene. But as we've grown older, realized like you said, we didn't have there was no trend to follow. So any of our fans kind of have come to us on their own terms, and I think that's why they've stuck around. Um, and and to your point of like Canadian, hey, if people, I appreciate you calling us legends. I think that we always had a vision of what it meant to be Canadian based on how we felt about Canada. And it was the same way like when I was listening to like UK music, what I found so cool about stuff in the 80s and the two-tone movement with like the Clash and the Specials and all of the mixture of that basically they promoted to the rest of the world, which was like, hey, look, when all these people came from the Windies, it's like when the Windrush happened, there was this explosion of music from like Don Letts playing it to like the Sex Pistols and the Clash to then this whole genre, which still exists today in the UK. And so we always thought that was possible in especially being Toronto based, And I think that and that we were sort of like, hey, we can try to make our own language with what, with maybe something a little more folky because that's more Canada. It's like a little bit more
Mhm.
folk element to it. Um, and yeah, for sure, it was an uphill. There's times the joke was we'd go around the world like if we're in Australia or wherever they'd be like, you'll never guess where they're from, Canada, you know.
And I'm glad you said that because that was
Yeah,
going to be my next question. Did people think
yeah,
that you were from England?
yes. They thought we were either from England, they thought we were from Southern California, um, you know, wherever. They just didn't think. We've realized in life, don't tell people where you're from. No one really cares.
True.
It doesn't matter. Well, I
But
mean,
but
it does matter, but yeah, don't tell them. If you're in the States, don't tell them you're from Canada.
but you guys are putting out music. I would say one of the most volatile times
Mhm.
um, in Canadian music history when I say that, because music videos were slowly
Yeah.
dying. So you
Yeah.
didn't really have what Much Music used to be in helping to
Yeah.
promote music. Napster was in full
Mm.
control.
Yeah.
Um, and smaller record companies that I remember dealing with were now being bought out
Yeah.
by the larger record companies. So Canadian artists who were doing well
Yeah.
with the smaller labels were recording music, bigger labels were buying them out, and then their music to this day are still on the shelf. How did you guys maneuver through all of that
Yeah.
going on?
I like I was sort of describing this over the last couple of days. There was whatever force was working for us. Like I look back on this now and feel so much gratitude. Um, because we had so many lucky moments. We believed passionately in what we were doing. First and foremost, we believed passionately. To your point, yeah, that did happen. We got to see the last days of brick and mortar record stores. I grew up on those. And yeah, like we were signed to Stomp Records, which was this little ska punk record label out of Montreal, and Warner bought them. And because I was so confident in my music, I said it was a distro deal. Like they were being distributed through Warner. Like as you're saying, everyone started wanting market share in that time frame. And so I said, well, we need a meeting with Warner and Steve Kane, who's the president there, who's nice. He's a music guy through and through. Always used to tell me I'm more of a rockabilly guy. Wasn't really into ska, but he's a Clash guy. So he's like, come on to the office, and we went in there very confident, as a couple of 21-year-olds are, that hey, we're here, so you guys,
Yeah.
come on, like pay attention. Um, and so we actually, when you say that, yeah, it probably was a hard time, but would we've been distributed through Warner? Probably not. The radio guy at the time told us, hey, you guys are kind of a college band. My daughter likes you, but you'll never be on the radio. And we just had a few lucky breaks. Radio One started playing us in England. There was a Zeller's ad in Canada, and then all of a sudden we were getting played more than Nickelback Photograph that summer, or on par. So, um, yes, times were hard, I think, and they're still obviously hard now. But somehow I feel like that actually helped our band in many ways because we didn't fit a mold. If it had been the strict like radio payola days, hey, we're not a rock band. We didn't have, we weren't, it wasn't a big money record. We made it for
You weren't a
$1,000.
boy band. You weren't a boy
No, we
band or
weren't a boy
anything.
band. Yeah.
And if I could say there were the three things that was going on then, you had to be like an all girl group, you had to be
Yeah.
a boy band, pop band, or
Yeah.
you had to be a rock band, like you said, like
Yeah.
Nickelback, and you
Yeah.
guys were none of those.
None of them. No. But we fit, and like so I don't know. Like it's like looking back on life, you think at the time, uh of course this was gonna happen because it's me. Like, and why wouldn't it? Like you're so into yourself, like in your 20s, you're like, well, I'm invincible. Like, of course I wasn't gonna die when I jumped off that building. Like whatever you're doing, so but looking back on it now, I'm like, man, we were just so lucky all the time. There was just always one person that would and it was always people. It was the power of like an individual person and their taste. The same reason we got played on Radio One in England. It was this one DJ who heard us, and he had a punk show and he started playing us, and they just had a chance. I went into when I was in England, I went in there I said, hey, I'm in London. Can I come in? I emailed him out of the blue, blind. And he's like, yeah, sure, come on in. I played the song acoustic on his show, which was on at like 9:30 p.m. It was a punk show called The Lockup. And then next week they're having a staff meeting and saying, "Hey, we want to add something just left of field to A-list on Radio One. We don't want it to come from a major label. We don't want it to be the typical manager or whoever's pushing this on us." And he's like, "Hey, this guy came in last week. What do you think of this song?" And they're like, "Sure." And like it's those little moments like that for our band have been what's changed it. It wasn't like the major label system or anything like that. And I don't know, maybe every band has a similar feeling, but we have this kind of piecemeal story where it was like just down to individuals, you know? So
The other thing that, and some people may disagree with this. I
mhm,
know as a reporter during that time, I heard it and I saw it. I'm not going to give names out because I don't want to disrespect anybody. You
yeah,
guys could play, as you said, you guys could play live.
yeah,
It didn't matter. You could just have a guitar. You didn't even need any instruments.
yeah,
At that time, and
oh
again,
yeah,
I know this for a fact for myself, there were a lot of bands. I don't want to say a lot, but there were bands and
yeah,
artists who you saw their music video. They could be playing this or doing this or whatever else.
uh-huh.
But if you paid attention and saw them live, instruments weren't plugged in. And a lot of times those vocals weren't their vocals. They were
Right.
tweaked.
Yeah.
I think that's one of the advantages you guys had. We didn't have to
Yeah.
worry about doing that with you guys.
Yeah, that's true. Has it gotten better though? I think it might have gotten worse. Does it even
I
matter
can
anymore? I don't know if it even matters. Like
I agree.
this is a really funny one. It's impossible to. I remember when we had no money, uh, and Zellers said they wanted to use "When the Night Feels My Song." This is before like the Edge had added it. I knew that the Edge was maybe going to add it. My agent at the time was like, "Hey, you guys have a shot at getting added at the Edge," which was a big deal at that time too, right? Um, still is a big deal, but it was a really big deal. A lot of people were competing for that, and Zellers called another person, David Heyman, rest in peace. He twice did this for me, for us, for our band. But he said, "Hey, I got a perfect band for you. This band, Bedouin Soundclash, could be used for the Zellers ad." So he called me out of the blue and said, "Hey, I've got like it was quite a bit of money for us at the time." Um, and we placed it in that ad, and it broke our song to like soccer moms across the country. It became like where we went from the punk section to the pop section, but I remember at that time, um, even my mom calling me. I mean, she was like a big, like Leonard Cohen, Neil Young kind of person growing up in Toronto. Like, she's like, you can't put your music in commercials. Like, that's selling out. Like, Dylan would never do that. I was like, no one's putting us on the radio, mom. I feel I work from a different generation. I was like, most of my favorite artists, they can only get their music on commercials. Like I remember that was the year that like Moby, like when Moby put out Play, and like he could only
Yeah.
put it out through commercials. So it's funny because that now has gone to everyone has no problem calling themselves a brand. No problem. If you can get yourself in a commercial, good for you. So yeah.
And you're right. And let's face it, man, I don't know how many, and kids today don't even know this. I don't know how many commercials I've heard these
Yeah.
days playing old school songs where I'm just
Oh
going,
yeah.
I'm sorry, what?
I
And it's
know.
like, oh man.
I know. Did
But
you remember like you'd hear that? Like I remember there that first time I remember I was a kid, we were watching TV, and my mom was just like beside herself because there was the times they are changing in like a bank in
yeah,
Montreal. It was like something like it was like just how much money must have had to be spent to get Dylan to do that. But anyway, I know
yeah,
now it's
yeah,
no problem.
yeah. Thank God they didn't allow Preparation H to use what was it again? Johnny Cash's song,
Was that a real thing? I think
Ring
it was
of
just joking.
Fire.
Are you
No,
serious?
dead serious. They wanted to do this, and people protested to the
So
max,
fun.
and they didn't do it because people did not want that song used in that manner. It was
When
too
that's one
disrespectful.
I'll stand by.
Yeah,
That's
yeah,
that was yeah.
ridiculous. But look, man, 20 years.
Okay.
So folks
Yeah.
need to know, man, what are we celebrating? 20th
Yeah.
anniversary of.
So the 20th anniversary of Sounding Mosaic, the album which had When the Night Feels My Song on, which, as we were just talking, kind of jump-started the whole thing for us. And so we're going across the country. Oh, I shouldn't say across the country. We're going from Victoria to Montreal, end of March.
And
And
Toronto and Toronto.
yeah. Sorry, I'm putting Victoria and Toronto in between Montreal. So we're doing like, let me just do it. You know what? Just so we respect every city. Victoria, Vancouver, Edmonton, Calgary, Hamilton, Toronto, Ottawa, and Montreal.
Are any of the songs being maybe updated or changed up a little bit for us?
We put out a 7 inch last year, at the end of last year in November, that was When the Night Feels My Song reimagined by some of our favorite artists. So we had, the idea was to go to places that have given us inspiration in the band. So we had Frank Turner do a version of When the Night. He kind of fulfilled that sort of Billy Bragg English folk guy doing it. And then we had Jesse Royal from Jamaica, who we love, and the Interrupters out of LA do a version of When the Night as well, which is more of like a rock steady version. We that's up that's You can stream it online right now. We also have 7 inches available as well. So
What? I've always said this. You know a good song
yeah,
when it can be done in any version, especially reggae. It
yeah,
could be
yeah,
done
yeah, yeah.
any version. What do you think it is about that song that's so magical?
I mean, well, the melody. I can't even when we play it now. And look at when I say this, I want to be clear that if I knew how to write When the Night, if I knew how I wrote it, well, I write them all the time, I guess, but it's one of those songs that just came out. And I know I talked to a lot of songwriters. You're like, you just knew where it was supposed to go, and it sort of feels like it was writing itself. It even named itself. Like I was walking down the street, I was like, it's called When the Night Feels My Song. I didn't really know what that meant. Like it was just I just thought it sounded like a title. That's it. There's a real mystery to it, and the mystery of writing it. But when I play it live, still it's just the way the melody resolves itself. So there's like the release, there's like I think that's why. I don't know because if I'm if and the other thing too is um when I wrote it, it was supposed to be the last track on the album. Like I was like, we just need
Mm.
one more. And I'm like, and so there's at the end of an album, you always do a Hail Mary. I'm like, I need one more song. So I wrote that and I was listening to like Ladysmith Black Mambazo. I was listening to a lot of like hymns, and I wanted a sort of gospel-y, spiritual feel to the end of the album. So people like an album track in the headphones, like you'd get that final like three-part harmony, and it was like this is the closer. And we didn't play it because first of all we didn't have three vocalists. It was just we just had me, and Pat wasn't able to play it and sing, and we had to learn. So it just wasn't a track in our set.
Yeah.
So I'm saying that because it's become a hit, and it is like I see it when we play it live, but it wasn't even clear to us for the first year of having it that it would become what it is. So
Has there ever been, and if not yet, it's going to happen during this tour,
mhm.
a moment where you're performing the song and then you just kind of stop and let the audience sing back to you?
Always. That's why I never get tired of the song. Every every night I let them sing it, and it's what keeps it alive.
Yeah.
Like that's obviously I don't sit at home listening to When the Night Feels My Song ever. I get to hear it a lot. But when but in terms of actual enjoyment of the song, I enjoy it immensely when you have a crowd of people who sing it back to you. It's an incredible thing. And we try to throw in, yeah, it's yeah, we whatever. I was gonna say something else, but
No, no. But here's the thing though, because you think about it, that song has been played at weddings, funerals,
yeah,
birthdays,
yeah,
graduations. Like it's part of the fabric of people's lives. And
yeah,
here you are saying you were doing a walk one day and the title
yeah,
came to you.
yeah. I remember exactly. I was walking down the street. Well, I was like 2 a.m. I was like walking home. Yeah, and you just those it's that intuition. That's the beauty. That's You get those magical intuitive moments as an artist every so often. That I can count on one hand those songs. And they name themselves. You don't name them. They name themselves. They record themselves. So, and I knew that. I knew that was the first. I remember when we recorded it vividly in Montreal, and I was like, "Oh, this song sounds. It's there's something happening that I can't describe that happens in the song that we didn't plan on." And that's when you're doing something like, okay, like it's got a life of its own. So,
Now I know you mentioned 7 inch, but I want to make sure for the younger folks who understand, we got vinyl on this. We got vinyl on this, correct?
Yeah. Yeah, we have actually at our shows we have for the first time Dine Alone has been great because we pressed the entire catalog of ours on vinyl. But we have this 7 inch, so a 7 inch being the like sort of shorter single of When the Night. It's like When the Night on one side, side A, side B. And we have the Frank Turner on side A, Interrupters, Jesse Royal side B. So
Yeah,
if that
so
better
people get
explains it.
yeah, no, no, and get people
Yeah.
out there to get those turntables back up. What's happening with the rest of the year? Are we looking at new music? Are we looking at maybe once this portion is done, are we going to tour again? Are we going to do
Yeah.
anything different? And have you guys ever released a holiday song?
It's so funny you say that. I've really people when we were people asked us to do that for so long, and I was like, no, 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 never. And now I finally want to do it. There might be. Um, uh, what we're doing the rest of the year, we're doing a few shows. Like we're doing a show in the Czech Republic. We're doing like some stuff in Europe. This is sort of an easy year for us after this tour. We're just sort of taking it off. We'll do some festivals here and there. I'm putting out a solo record, and then we're going to start working on the new Bedouin record, but that'll be 2026. So,
Okay.
yeah, lining things up. This was supposed to be like the down. So, yeah, we because this tour was going to happen last year. Eon broke his wrist, so we kicked it down to March, and he's back. He's ready. I saw him yesterday. He's ready to go. So, yeah,
As we're wrapping this up, what I'm loving is the fact that about 2 years ago,
yeah,
Canadian 70s and 80s bands were getting their flowers and
yeah,
getting recognized. Uh, Last year was Canadian hip hop was being
yeah,
recognized, and I feel like now, like with Sum 41 getting their flowers this year at the Junos. I feel
yeah.
like this era is now starting to get recognized. You're part of that era, man.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
how do you feel that now people are now looking towards bands like yourselves
yeah.
and the contributions that you guys have done for Canadian music?
Well, man, you know what? We're honored that I just saw Sum 41's show, and I was hung out with Cone for a bit. We love those guys. I've seen that show twice actually. Um, yeah, I mean, if we were included in that, like, it's an honor, and we're so great. We are so grateful that we can go across the country, and people that don't think they know our music, we can like play this one song and everyone will sing to it. It's a kind of a funny social experiment that we'll do. Um, but yeah, hey, look, like, I think as well, I was saying that sounding a mosaic, the whole idea of sounding a mosaic was referencing sort of the Pierre Trudeau version of Canada, which was the cultural mosaic. And in that painting that I did for the album cover, it was collaged into it was a paper about how basically can Canadian society or liberal societies, how do they ingest illiberal ideas, and is that actually possible? What we're saying with our band was that everything that we loved was a result of people being on the edge of what you're allowed to do. And on both the left and the right, there's a real protectionism that has come about, especially in the last 10 years, about what you're allowed to do and what you're not allowed to do. And it doesn't have anything to do with making art. It has something to do with power or whatever it is. And I think, and as you were describing that, if there can be a sort of another take on like the fact that one of the beautiful things for me within art is that it's seeing an individual take something together or a group of people take something together and making something that couldn't have possibly been done by anyone else but those people and those individuals, and it's something that hadn't been there before, and it isn't constricted by cultural police, or whatever it is that you're doing. So I
Yeah.
think like, and that's what Sounding Mosaic was to us. Hey, if this is a mosaic, it's like this could be one piece of it. That was sort of what we were putting forward as when we put this album out.
My brother, I gotta say, man, thank you so much. Not just
Yeah.
for this interview. Thank you for the interviews over the years, whether it been
Yeah.
on Much Music Red Carpets or
I
whatever
know. I
else.
know.
Or what a blast. And I'm so glad that you guys are still doing what you're doing. I'm
Thank
so
you.
glad that the celebration is happening. But
Yeah.
for me, I am so glad that I was able to be part of the journey to be able to tell your stories through my microphone. It has been an honor and a pleasure, and I
Yeah.
am so glad to continue doing this. Thank you so much for what you
Hey,
guys have done for Canadian music.
we love you, man. Hopefully we can see you at the show. Please come out if you're around.
Hell yeah, I will be there
Okay.
because here's the thing. I don't have any of your shirts or anything, so I gotta buy new merch. You
Yeah,
know,
listen, whatever you want from the table is yours.
thanks, man. I
Have an
appreciate it.
inch.
Thank you again for the interview.
Yeah, thank you, man. So good to see you.